First, though, in a wide-ranging interview, Peter Dutton has spoken on the prospect of forming minority government, as you heard there in Trudy's report, and on other issues like wanting to break up the insurance industry companies, potentially if costs don't come down. Let's bring in our political editor, my colleague Andrew Clennell. Andrew, let's start on that issue of majority government. Peter Dutton is aiming for it, but he's being open about the prospects of having to negotiate if not.
Yeah, I had to tease him into it. I had to press him a bit because his standard line in Anthony Albanese's is we're going to win majority government. They have to say that, Kieran, but everyone in politics knows that the hung parliament is a very short favourite for this contest if there isn't a big momentum swing in the campaign. So he indicates here that if he's in a situation where he's in the early 70s in terms of seats, and that would require him to win about 14 or 15 seats, then he would expect the independents to come his way. But he believes their natural way for the majority of them is to go with Labor. So if we had a situation where the Coalition and Labor were both in the mid-60s, Peter Dutton knows that he's got no chance of forming government. He was the opposition leader.
The Green Teals will only ever support a Labor government. So I think we need to be honest about the fact that if you vote for Monique Ryan, if you vote for Zoe Daniel, if you vote for Kate Chaney, you're voting for Anthony Albanese and a minority government with the Greens. It would be a disaster for
But
WA.
if you won 71?
We'll talk with the crossbench, but I can promise you that it's clear from their voting pattern. 80% of the time they support the Greens
So they're never coming your way?
They will never come our way. And let's be honest, if they're
nevertheless, there might be four or so who might come your way if you got to 72.
Well, it would be unusual that if we were able to achieve 72 and we were a number of seats ahead of the Labor Party, that there wouldn't be a guarantee of supply.
So, Kieran, you mentioned Peter Dutton's news conference. He's on the campaign trail already. He's going to 4 states and territories this week. We've got a bit of a faux campaign going on ahead, potentially, of the Prime Minister calling the election in about 2 weeks' time. I think that's a live possibility if we get a rate cut tomorrow. If we don't get a rate cut, there could still be a May election, but I believe there will be a rate cut. Peter Dutton in this interview had no doubt there was no budget to be handed down as scheduled on March 25.
I don't think there'll be a budget before the election. I think the election's imminent, and I think the Prime Minister realises that people have stopped listening, and that they realise that that this government is going from bad to worse, and they can make all sorts of promises. They can run all sorts of scare campaigns over the course of the next couple of months or weeks, whatever it might be. I think Australians are too smart for that. They realise that this government started with promise, and they've finished in a pretty in a state of disrepair.
You know, there's a lot of what Peter Dutton's doing that I think is going to resonate with people, including just that being frank about, we know the way they're going to vote, we've got to negotiate if we're in that position, not trying to spin some line that leaders have done over elections in the past, when really, you know, if it ends up in minority, of course they're going to negotiate. He's being, I think that's being legit. I think it'll be well received. He was also pretty upfront and frank when it comes to insurance companies when he spoke to you, Andrew.
Yes, he was. And, you know, we hear a lot about grocery prices and about power prices and about mortgages and rents. But what about insurance? It's gone up 20 to 30%. So Peter Dutton, when I asked about it, indicated that when they're looking at cost of living relief, when they're looking at this divestiture policy that they are for supermarkets, he's got insurance companies in his sights as well.
We need competition, we need depth in the insurance pool, and we need to make sure that we're not being ripped off by insurance companies. And as we've done with the supermarkets, where we have threatened divestment if consumers are being ripped off, similarly in the insurance market, we will intervene to make sure that consumers get a fair go, because at the moment, people are paying too much for their insurance, and what's resulting is that people aren't taking out insurance.
Now, something that you and I have spoken about a lot, Andrew, will there be tax cuts from either side?
I think there will. I think there will. And I think you said last week it was a matter of who moved first. Well, it'll be the Coalition who moves first. The Coalition are more minded towards a lower taxes type policy. We know that. But I think it'll be sort of midway through the campaign. And then Labor will have to come up with its form match. Will it be an exact match as we've seen in the past? Difficult. Peter Dutton gives those tax cuts at the upper level. I wouldn't be surprised if Jim Chalmers is working on various tables right now, Kieran. So Peter Dutton basically just, I mean, it's pretty easy to rule this out, isn't it? It's pretty easy to rule it out if it's not your intention to promise them. Have a listen. Are you going to promise Australians tax cuts in the campaign?
We've been very clear that we want a simpler, fairer tax system. We want to reduce taxes wherever possible, but we'll be dictated to by how much money is left in the bank. We're not going to act in an irresponsible way, and if we can afford tax cuts, then they'll be delivered.
And another one that you asked him, will Rudd remain ambassador? And his inclination is to keep him there as ambassador to the US if he wins.
Keep him there, but assess what he's doing. So there's plenty of wriggle room here, Kieran, and that's why perhaps it was reported in both ways yesterday in the follow-up to the interview. He says, look, my first position is to keep him there. But if I find out he's not getting us the results we want, the access we want, that's a pretty big opening, I would replace him. If you're elected, will you replace Kevin Rudd as ambassador?
It's not a yes or no answer that can be given. We have to have an ambassador who is in our country's best interests, and if he's the best person for the job, then he should stay in the job. If it turns out that he's had no access to the White House and no real influence in relation to this issue or whatever the next issue might be, then you would have to reassess his position.
Andrew, thank you. Yes, a wide-ranging interview, some good stories out of it too, as always. Thank you.